Wow, sobrang ganda dito, guys.
Yes.
Ano ba yung sabi mo sa boat tour
Ang
natin?
ganda.
Yan. Ang galing rin ng tour guide namin kasi ini-explain niya yung mga architectural facts ng mga structure dito. If you're going to Chicago, it is highly recommended to
Yeah, it's so nice.
have a boat tour.
So pretty.
Kasi you will see the story, the history around the city. And so cool, guys. So daming piece of art dito. Saka lamig lang, guys. Kasi fall na kaya.
This beautiful opening shot of Chicago.
Wow. Awesome.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've been doing this a while, right? So officially with my favorite shot of Chicago, welcome to Chicago, everyone. Now we talked a little bit about the stuff over on the right. Let's take a look at some of this stuff over here on the left. And of course, the first thing I have to tell you about is this amazing blue building. And you see what I mean about how when we were first passing by it, it looked great, but it looks much better when you're taking it from the east because the shading that is created by those vertical lines, you can actually see those vertical lines are not straight up and down rectilinear. They actually have a little bit of a wave to them. Isn't that cool?
Right.
And then the glazing on the building, the actual glass, from this angle you can see especially, is not just one color, it's actually several shades that add to that undulating aquatic appearance. I had somebody on a tour just a couple weekends ago. She was sitting right up here and she goes, "That is a very sexy building." And I was like, yes. Yes, it is.
Definitely.
So you're looking at the third tallest building in the city of Chicago, first tallest Sears Tower, second tallest Trump Tower, third tallest Vista Tower. You're also, and this is more important, looking at the tallest building in the world designed by a woman. And as a woman-owned business owner, I like this fact. You're looking at the tallest building in the world designed by an architectural firm that is led by that woman. Because it's one thing to say I'm a woman architect, I work for some dude, and I'm a woman architect, I work for myself. Her name is Jeannie Gang. She leads her own firm, Studio Gang. The building itself is called Vista Tower. It's a mixed-use building that's going to have condos, it's going to have a hotel, maybe a little bit of office down at the bottom. There's another building that Jeannie Gang and Studio Gang did, a couple buildings over from that, right behind that silver triangle. And by the way, the silver triangle from 1988, that's the Swiss Hotel. Keep triangles in mind. I'm going to tell you guys about the guy who did that. He loved triangles. I'm going to tell you about him a little bit later. Just behind that, though, the building that has the wavy balconies. What a unique shape on that building.
Awesome.
That one's called Aqua. It was also done by Jeannie Gang of Studio Gang. Finished in 2010. It's also a mixed-use building. So you get condos, you get hotel, a little bit of office down in the bottom. Store on your left. These are called the river cottages. Everybody take a good close look at the river cottages. Notice all the triangles. Triangular holes for the balconies, triangular windows, diamond-shaped windows. Well, here's the secret. A diamond is just a bunch of triangles put together. Anytime you see triangles in Chicago's architecture, like that silver triangle I pointed out before, you take a guess that a man named Harry Weiss had something to do with it. He lived throughout the 20th century. The man loved triangles. Now, sometimes people ask me, Hillary, what is your favorite building in Chicago? I got maybe a top 5. Definitely one of them is this one on the left. Look at the shape of that.
Wow.
If you don't love architecture, now you will, because look at that building. It always has a reason for looking why it looks. It's never just to look cool. So this one was from 2017, just known by its address, 150 North Riverside. It's an office building from Getch Partners. Why has it got that weird shape? Well, you actually already know the answer. This point where all the branches meet up is called Wolf Point. Wolf Point is the confluence point, and you can orient yourself on any map of Chicago by way of the Y shape of the river. This is where we had a lot of our firsts as a city. This is where we had our first 2 bars, our first bridge, our first post office, our first hotel. In fact, our first hotel would have been over there on the right side. It was called the Sauganash Hotel. And that was where, on March 4th, 1837, a group of people got together inside to the tune of fiddle music played by Marc Beaubien, the hotel owner. And they decided that 3,000 people population, that's big enough to legally call ourselves a city. So March 4th, 1837 is Chicago's official legal birthday as a city. Which, by the way, would make us a Pisces. Chicago's Pisces. All right. First building on the main branch, on your left, is a wonderful example of the Art Deco style. If people ever know styles, they'll usually know the Art Deco style, popular in the 1920s and 30s. This building is called the Merchandise Mart from 1931, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White. Those heads out front are called the Merchandise Mart Hall of Fame. People like Marshall Field and Aaron Montgomery Ward. Now, in terms of that cake analogy, look at how the Art Deco style, you got a little bit of detail in the bottom and the top. That chevron patterning, those copper-colored diamond shapes, that's technically frosting on the cake. So you're not quite to just the cake just yet. Through the 20s and the 30s, you're starting to pull away that frosting, but the frosting that's left is a very futuristic, mechanically punched out glaze on the cake. All right? Now, we're about to pass under LaSalle Street, which is named after an early French explorer who came here in the late 1600s. Does anyone here speak French? Or just want to hear his name pronounced very French? Robert René Cavelier sur de la Salle. We call it LaSalle Street. Just after that, on the left, this brick building gives you a good idea of how we used to build buildings on the Chicago River. This is from 1913. It's an old warehouse, the old Reed Murdoch warehouse.
Wow.
Nowadays, we use it as offices and some cool little restaurants down at the bottom. Take a close look at it, though. It's actually asymmetrical. It's got one full extra bay of windows to the right of the clock tower than it does to the left. Now, originally, when this was built in 1913, of course, it was symmetrical. Unfortunately, about 10 years after it was built, the city decided to widen LaSalle Street back there. So instead of going around the existing building, which would have put a big, ugly bend in our otherwise very straight grid system of streets, they literally just plowed through the building, knocked off the bay, finished off the edge. Can't even tell. Gold up on top. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
Real gold on top of a building, by the way. That is definitely frosting on that cake, so it tells you it's older. That one's from 1929. It's an old office building called the Carbide and Carbon Building, but nowadays it's a hotel, the St. James Hotel on Michigan Avenue. Back to these corn cobs over here on your left. Now that we are at the base of them, you can understand why their real name is Marina City, and they got a cute little marina down there. Above that, restaurants. The House of Blues is tucked back there as well. Above that, parking, though that is all professional valet. They don't trust people to park their own cars there anymore. Above that, places to live. So the idea that this architect, Bertrand Goldberg, had was he saw people leaving the city to go and live in the suburbs throughout the 20th century. We call it suburban flight. Well, if the city keeps losing people, if it's bleeding people, it's going to die. And so he wanted to make city living much more welcoming and palatable. He built these welcoming cities within cities. Now, so here you have over on the right, this building at the end of this row of buildings. Now that we're to the front of it, you see it's got this concave curvilinear facade and an entire colonnade of Corinthian columns up on top. It's got urns, it's got finials, it's got that dental patterning, it's got a balustrade, tempietto. All that architectural terminology is frosting, frosting, frosting on the cake. So it tells you it's older. This one's from 1923. Nowadays, it is the London House Hotel. Another one over on the yellow ball on top. That one today is the Intercontinental Hotel right on the Mag Mile, but it actually began as the Medina Athletic Club for Men. The Shriners had their headquarters and athletic facilities in that building. It was built 1929. If you guys want to see a cool interior, go to the Intercontinental and just get lost in those first few floors. The interior is absolutely stunning. Also on the left, you have the Apple Store. Just behind the Apple Store, though, there's a building that has flying buttresses and beautiful Gothic tracery up on top. Tracery is that term for that kind of stone lacy work up on top of that building. That is called the Tribune Tower. It was built 1925, designed by a couple of guys from New York, John Howells and Raymond Hood. Now, there's some things I can't show you guys on a boat tour. I can tell you guys about that building, but there's some things you just kind of have to remember. So on the left, 1929, from Graham Anderson, Probst, and White, the Civic Opera Building. But even if that label wasn't there, look at how at the bottoms of the windows, you've got theatrical faces all over the place. So that signals there's some kind of theater on the inside. It houses the Lyric Opera of Chicago. Back over on the right, also from 1929, an office building known by its address anymore. Well, look at the part with the clock, and just down to the right and the left of the clock, you can make out faint reliefs of ancient scribes hammering out the news of their day, because it's actually the old Daily News building, an old newspaper headquarters. So sometimes, if you pay a little bit more attention to the frosting, it'll tell you a little bit more about the cake. Now on the left after the bridge is a building that I admittedly kind of... And now, without further ado, everyone, I would like to introduce you all to Hillary Marzek's favorite bridge in Chicago. Isn't it beautiful? It's very industrial chic. It's a very Instagrammable bridge. Hashtag vertical lift bridge. It's a very trending hashtag. So that bridge is from 1915, part of a series of piers that were never built, but this one was. And it was renamed Navy Pier in the 1920s to honor the Navy's service in World War I. It's 1 kilometer long, it's 104 years old, and take a close look at it, it's empty. That's the second most popular tourist destination in the state of Illinois, and it is empty. That shows you what the pandemic has done to tourism. So on that note, thank you guys for doing the tour. Visit the exact spot where the fire started. All you have to do is go to the Chicago Fire Academy, because they purposely built it on Mrs. O'Leary's homestead, okay? And it's got a bright red wall to remind every student who comes in, hey, remember what started here back in the day. So anyway, Catherine O'Leary goes out to her barn to milk her cow at 9 o'clock at night, October 8th, 1871. The cow gets startled, was not expected to be milked at 9 o'clock at night, kicks over her lantern, and it sets the entire city of Chicago on fire. That's it. That's the explanation. That sounds very reasonable. Or it could be the truth of the matter, and I'm here today to set the record straight on behalf of my Irish brethren and sistren. Okay? And I'm going to toss in my Polish ones for fun. That story was totally made up. It was made up just a few days after the fire by a reporter, of all people. Fake news, right? A reporter made up the story to be able to sell more papers. And think about it. What's going to sell more papers? A headline that says, we just lost 18,000 buildings and we have no idea what happened. Or, we just lost 18,000 buildings and it was those dirty Irish immigrants that we all want to hate. We really don't have a reason to, but now we do. Yeah, go get them. Right? There was rampant anti-Irish sentiment at the time, rampant anti-immigrant sentiment at the time. The very first ghetto in Chicago was an Irish ghetto up on the north branch of the river. And speaking of Al Capone's most famous rival, Dean O'Banion, he was actually an Irish American that was born in Chicago's first ghetto, which they originally called Kilgubbin. Eventually they called it Little Hell, not only because of the poor and criminal circumstances of the neighborhood, but also because of these massive factories that would literally belch fire into the sky. All right, but that's an aside. That was just for you. So, who better to blame for the fire at the time than she's Irish, she's an immigrant, she's Catholic, she's a woman. She's perfect to blame some kind of disaster on. She's a perfect scapegoat. So they blame the whole thing on her. I'm here today to set the record straight for you guys. Not only was the story made up, but also both the woman and the cow were legally exonerated by the city of Chicago in the 1990s. So 120 years after the fire, they legally exonerate both woman and cow. So you guys can spread the word. What we do know about the fire, it wiped out 18,000 buildings. No matter if we know what caused it or not, we really don't know. It was probably just natural causes. Wiped out 18,000 buildings, killed about 300 people, which given the scope, it could have been a lot worse. And it left about 100,000 people homeless, which was about a third of our population at the time. And this is October in Chicago. You don't know from one day to the next if you're going to need a parka or a bikini, right? You don't want to be left homeless in Chicago in October. So what's the good to come out of the fire? Well, everything. Everything I teach people about on my tours. The second city. We got to build a great city not once, we got to build it twice. And that is all I have to say about that. Now, over on your left, you can probably...
Hello guys, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Yeah, thank you sa pagsama sa tour na